Hi there. Today I'm going to show you how to make a wood bench pallets, but they're a special kind of pallet called a European pallet. It's got my cool little insignia on it, but I'm going to show you how to make these. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you have to do is get some pallets. Now I get them from a friend of mine whose company deals with England. And so they send me these pallets. They send him these pallets, and then he brings them to me. So it's hard to find these. They're very special. So you know they're in European of some kind. It has a couple of features. One is the wood is a little thicker. I mean, this is almost an inch thick. And then it's got EPAL, could stand for English pallet or European pallet. It's the same concept. The forks can go in here, or the fork can go down in here. But he brought me these, and I said, gosh, what can I do with these? And because I was making other things out of American pallets, and so I said, I think I can make a bench out of these. And so it takes two of these pallets. So the first thing we have to do is we have to shorten them a little bit. That's too big for a seat or too big for a back. So what I do is I take the top two pieces off. Now you'll notice it goes wide, thin, wide, thin, wide. So what I do is I take the top wide one and the thin one off of this, and then I leave those three. Now those three are going to become, this part of this could actually become the bench part, the seat part, or the back. And I also took this part off, this one off right here. Now if it's the seat part, then I'm going to leave these two on for strength for the seat. If it's the back part, then I just remove these with a Sawzall. Okay, I just remove these. Now, if it's the bench, the seat part, I need to cut this off. So what I have determined is I go about right at this tip of this piece, and that becomes my guide, and I cut it slightly at an angle so that the seat or the back of it goes at an angle, so you're not sitting at a 90 degrees. So I'm going to show you what I do for that. If it is the back part, then I want to leave part of this. I want to cut these off, and then I want to leave part of this. And I'll show you what that is, how far to cut that also. Okay? So that's your first step, is to remove things. You're going to have extra leftover pieces that we're actually going to use. So you get two pieces out of that. Now, here's what those two pieces would look like together. Kind of like this. Now this is tipped, so I can show you this, but there's the bench part, the seat part. It's still got those pieces, and then here's the back. Now something I also do for the back, because I took those pieces off, is I put screws, 1.25" screws into all these pieces here, so that this has more strength. Here's that angle I was talking about. So this is the bottom piece, there's the corner edge of that, and I set my saw, it's a circular saw roughly at 13 degrees to cut through this. I'll show you that in a second. And I get this cut, which turned out beautiful. Not all the time does this come out beautiful. And this was my guide, and you just go all the way down. Then you turn your saw over, or flip this over, sorry, and you cut this way. The problem is the saw blade only goes about this far. So how do you find this point? Well, what I do is I take a straight edge. Once I get this cut, it's not very deep actually, but it still get a cut. I take a straight edge and I mark all the way to this point, and then I do it on the other side. I connect those two, and that's my guide. That's my guide. This doesn't always turn out perfect, okay? And in fact, you actually end up with a little bit in between that you never got to cut. Here comes the Sawzall again. And you cut these, and it's these three pieces that you have to do. It's only these three. Well, this one, and then this guy, and then that guy is the only one you have to do. So you have some pieces left over from that. We also cut this at that 13-degree angle, and the reason I cut that is so that it just looks sharp. It just looks good when you do it that way. And the distance I use, I measure from here all the way down to here, and it's 13 inches. The reason I use 13 inches is because this is my jig. It's to help me with the armrests. It'll help me with set the legs, which I'll show you in a second. This is 7 inches. This is 6 inches, and even on a little bit of a slant, you still go ahead and use 13 inches. So what I do is I take my tape measure, put it here, measure down 13 here, do it on the other side, and I draw a straight line through these 3 pieces, and I cut. And then I can screw these together, just like this. Now, I get that 13 degrees, I'm estimating 13 degrees from my saw. What I do is I tilt it. Now, what I tilt it at is I take the piece and I tilt it so that my 10-degree line is right on this knob. Now, I don't know if you have a knob, but I take that 10-degree line and put it right on that knob, but there's the arrow. And I'm guessing that's 13 degrees. See, there's 15 and there's 10. So that's why I say 13. And we tighten it. Okay. So that's how you cut the 13 degrees. Now, once I have this screwed together, I need to make legs for it. Well, you remember those pieces that I cut off over here? I cut off a narrow one here, and I cut off the back here. Well, those 2 pieces are right here. This piece and this piece. Now, I would remove these 3 blocks using that Sawzall again, or just pry them off. Sometimes they come off and you got to remove the nails. And I do take out any nails, even if I use a Sawzall. I take out these nails, okay, use my nail set, pound them out, throw those away. All right, so then I take the nails out of here also, no nails. And what I do is I put this one on top of this one, and I screw in together. Actually, I screw in from the bottom, because this is from this piece. Now these would be gone, these would be gone, so I screw in upward. And I wind up with something that looks like this. This was 2 pieces, like this. This piece here was the piece that had the blocks, took those off. The piece underneath was the piece I took off the front of the pallet, and I put them like this, and then I'd make 2 marks and I cut them. The question is, what are these angles? Well, this will be the back, because it's at a steeper angle. That is 11 degrees. This is 4 degrees. 11 and 4. You need 2 sets of these. This would be the left side, this would be the right side. So meanwhile, you have another set ready to go, like this. And if you look, this is the 11 opposite, and this is the 4 opposite. So we have 4 and 11, 4 and 11. You have to make them different. And you can see I have the screws holding them together here. Once we have that cut, now we're ready to assemble this, sort of. So we come back over here to our jig. This was the 4 degree, so it's going to be in the front. This is the 11, so it's going to be in the back. And so I'm not going to attach them yet. There, see, isn't that nice how that lines up right here and right there? So I'm not going to attach them yet, because what I want to do is I want to remove this piece under here. So while it's sitting here, I'm going to make a mark under here and a mark under here, and I want to remove this piece. So what it looks like is this. After I make those marks, I have a mark here and a mark here. So what I'm going to do is take my circular saw again. I'm going to change its depth so it only cuts this piece. And I have that marked. And it's about an inch because each of these pieces is about an inch thick. Sometimes you have to change it a little bit. And once I get those, then I can basically attach it. But before I do, I want to strengthen this. I only have one screw here. I don't have any more. So you can put a screw here. I actually use my my nail gun, and it's set with thin little pieces, so I just put 4 of them in here. I think it's a little cheaper than using screws, or it looks better because you don't see them as much. And then I put 4 here. See this hole here? I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about it anywhere, simply because whether it's on the front of this or anywhere, because it gives it character. Don't worry about making it perfect. It gives it character. Okay, so once I do that, I pull it over here and I cut it. I end up losing a piece that looks like this. So that's what comes out of it. After I cut it, that's what comes out of it. Then I take it back and I slide it on. It slides on nicely, and then I screw it. Now, if you look down here, your legs, though, are not going to be straight. So what I have developed is, after making, I've made 70 of these, I basically mark it from this front right here. I mark it 10 inches. There's a mark right there, 10 inches. And then from the front of the back leg over here, I also mark it 10 inches. Then I take a straight edge and connect these two, straight edge, and then I take my saw. I have to reset it to make it go through 2 inches now, and then I just cut it straight. It's amazing how accurate that works. It's very interesting. If you do this correctly, you'll get this mark pretty close to this edge, and then this mark will be here, but when you draw the straight line, it's close to that edge. So if you look, you go like this. And then when you put these in, screw those in with 3-inch screws again. You do the other side, and then you set it down, you get something that looks like this. And lo and behold, it turns out that it sits very solid. And if you look closely right here, you see here's that piece that got cut out. And then under here is that piece. And this actually holds up some of this weight. It does have 3-inch screws over here, but this piece helps hold that weight. And it looks good, because when I just did one piece right here, it looked very weak. So we put it on here. All right. So I also, meanwhile, I have sanded this quite a bit. I have sanded it and sanded it and sanded it. You can use a belt sander. You can use a palm sander. But it does help to make it a little smoother. All right. Now, how do you make the armrests? So I have one here. It sits like that because we did it so nicely with the jig. It sits like that. So how do you do that? Well, turns out you have another piece left over. So this is the legs parts. You have a big piece left over right here, a thick one, a wide one, I should say. Now, when I first did this, the wide one I thought was too wide to make, and this one was too skinny to make a good armrest. So I kept cutting this piece until I got a good width. I like this size. This is 4.5 inches, and the length is 20 inches. Now, that's not set in stone, because what I do is I take this piece. Now, you notice this has the knockout holes from this side. I don't like this at all. So what I do is I turn it over. It looks a lot better. So this is my template. So I put it like that so that it's up against this last hole. So the other one would start here and go that way. So this is cut out. So I have that like that. That's the top. this is going to sit against the bench. And that's where I would mark it. But I have a little hole here. So I might go longer. I might go shorter, depending on what happened down there too. So you cut these lengths. Then I run it through a table saw at this width, or you could cut this first. Okay, and then you have this piece left. Another thing I do is I cut these little ears off of here to make it, and then smooth that out nicely. Sand that, of course, sand it nicely. And I do it down here for people who come across and around it. And I leave this one whole. This piece will go inside, so when you put it on, it actually looks like that. And I do about an inch and a quarter sticking out here. So if you take your tape, let me grab that. And I have it already marked on a piece of wood. So if you go like that and go inch and a quarter, that's perfect right there, inch and a quarter. And then this would have to come out a little because it's not quite an inch and a quarter. So it would have to come out, and then you would screw it in. Boom, boom, boom. 3 screws. I screw from the bottom. I go up with about a 2-inch screw from the bottom up this way at an angle, and then one from back here, there we go, back here, in this way. One thing you might notice right here is that this does not match because I didn't cut that at an angle to match this. If you want to get fancy, take this last little bit and cut it at the 13-degree angle on your chop saw or your table saw and run that and cut it off. And that's what that looks like. So that's what that would be. In fact, I did it on this one. So if you look back here, you look and see that this hits up here. So this is slight angle, and it ends up hitting. And it turns out very solid. And what people do to make it look a little cooler is you put on, because it is pretty hard, so you put on a little soft cushion to help, and that makes it look good. And then we even have some pillows that we put on ours, and it makes it even softer. There we go. And now we have our finished bench. Isn't that cool? The first one took me, oh my gosh, 5-6 hours. After doing 70 of them, I can pull these out in a matter of 2 hours. It does take a while because you got a lot of setup. You got to set this, then you got to change that, you got to change the saws. You use about 5 or 6 different tools, which I love to do. You got to have room for it. And then you end up, oh my gosh, look at this. So I end up with extra pieces, especially those blocks. I have stacks of those. And I do make other little furniture with it. I've made end tables. I kept those little, see those little things that you cut out? I got no idea what I'm going to do with those, but I kept a bunch of those. I just hate throwing stuff away. And then here's some extra of those pieces. That's one piece you do end up with extra, is that wider piece, because you only use one of them for the, so every bench I've made, I have an extra piece. Now I have used some of those for like coffee tables and things like that. So it's a cool project. Thank you. See you later. Bye.